In just a moment, a celebration of faith, hope, and freedom right here in New York City.
We have an up-close and personal view of this year's World Falun Dafa Day Parade right here on NTD, starting now.
Thousands have come to Manhattan to take part in this year's World Falun Dafa Day Parade, celebrating the day this practice and its principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance were brought to the public.
This May 13th will be its 33rd anniversary, and that's despite being a meditation practice that's been persecuted in China today. So this parade's also a demonstration of resilience and hope.
I'm Fiona G.
And I'm Carrie Dunst.
And we're also joined here at the desk by Cynthia Sun. She is a researcher at Falun Dafa Info Center, a fellow at First Freedom Foundation. She is also herself a Falun Dafa practitioner. And of course, we can't forget she is our Miss NTD 2023. That is a very impressive title. So Cynthia, it is great having you here today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate a great celebration. No better way to start today off.
And on the ground, we've also got our team of reporters. We've got Sherry Ning and Arlene Richards. They'll be your eyes and your ears around the parade, bringing you parade reactions and powerful stories of courage, hope, and gratitude from Falun Dafa practitioners.
And to really appreciate this parade, you have to know the story of how Falun Dafa and its persecution came to be. Since its introduction to the public, Falun Dafa has gained the respect of people from all around the world, but its adherents are still facing a decades-long state-sanctioned persecution inside of China. So Kevin and I, we're going to walk you through some of the key events to really appreciate how we got to today with this parade. Kevin, take us back to the early days of this practice.
In 1992, from May 13th to the 22nd, that's when Falun Gong's founder, Mr. Li Hongzhi, introduced the practice to the public with his first lectures. Its moral teachings are based on truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, and the spiritual practice was widely recognized for the health benefits that it brought to adherents.
And these values, they really resonated with a lot of people because in just 6 short years, 100 million people were practicing Falun Dafa.
Yes, official figures from Chinese authorities show that between 70 to 100 million people were practicing in China, and that's more than the Chinese Communist Party or CCP's membership at the time. And Shanghai TV reports that people in several continents had taken up the practice, with the worldwide total reaching about 100 million.
But then we get to a dark day, Kevin, July 20th of 1999.
Yes, Fiona, that's when the persecution started. In the lead up to this, 45 Falun Gong practitioners were illegally detained, and so 10,000 adherents peacefully assembled at the government compound in Beijing to peacefully appeal the arrest of these practitioners, and so they were later released. Then leader of the CCP, Jiang Zemin, viewed Falun Gong's popularity as a threat, and so he created the Gestapo-like 610 office that had millions of Falun Gong practitioners illegally arrested and hundreds of thousands tortured.
And this persecution, it's only escalated over the years because the CCP then began a horrific crime on an unprecedented scale.
Yes, it's the gruesome practice of forcibly removing the organs of living prisoners of conscience against their will, and that's what the CCP has been doing to the Falun Gong still to this day.
It's absolutely unbelievable, but these practitioners of Falun Dafa, they have not let up in their perseverance. They are determined to advocate for their freedom of belief. Just this week, Kevin, a bill passes the House in relation to this.
Yes, the Falun Gong Protection Act got bipartisan support and passed in a voice vote with no objections. It directs the president to sanction any foreign individual connected to China's illicit organ trade, and also requires that agencies keep tabs on China's organ transplant business, especially with respect to Falun Gong.
And so these values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, they've spread all around the world to over 100 different countries. We've got Falun Dafa practitioners in Taiwan, in Italy, in Vietnam, of course, in New York as well.
Yes, and even people in Togo, Africa are practicing.
And so 33 years later today, there are still so many practitioners of Falun Dafa who are dedicated to raising awareness of this persecution and to clarifying the truth about what Falun Dafa truly is.
A very comprehensive timeline of Falun Dafa's history you just saw there. Nicely done, Fiona and Kevin.
Oh, well, thank you, Carrie.
Now we're going to fill you in on the parade route. The parade starts at 47th Street and 2nd Ave, near the headquarters of the United Nations. From there, it goes down 2nd Ave and turns west on 42nd Street. It's a straight shot from there, passing Grand Central Terminal, Bryant Park, Times Square, and the Port Authority bus terminal, all the way to the Chinese consulate on 12th Avenue where it ends. And we're going to jump right into the parade. Let's have a look.
All right, and we're seeing there a live look of the Falun Dafa Day parade happening in the heart of Manhattan. Oh, right there we're seeing the Tianguo marching band. And it seems that it is raining out there, but these practitioners of Falun Dafa, they're going strong. This rain does not seem to be holding them back.
Not deterred at all. Thousands of them have arrived, and it seems like it's almost strengthened them. They've got their rain gear on, and they're in it to win it. Look at that.
I know, and just a little bit of background info on the Tianguo marching band. It was founded, the New York Tianguo marching band was actually founded way back in 2005. It's made up of fully volunteers, and they're all Falun Dafa practitioners that come from all walks of life who volunteer their time to try and spread this message of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Now, the word Tianguo, it actually means celestial. And so now let's listen in and hear this music. All right, so we just saw there a look at the Tianguo marching band. We could still hear them a little bit in the background there, but it's very moving music.
It's very moving, and the trumpets, the drums, it really reminds me of Les Miserables. There's a song where the drums beat and your hearts beat along with it. I just want to comment on the colors. Wow, look at those bright yellow, blue. In the back, I think I see other greens, reds as well. This says World Falun Dafa Day, and it's a triple celebration today because you know May is the month of the practice being taught to the public, and it's also the founder Li Hongzhi's birthday. And this week we're celebrating a third unexpected surprise, which is the passing of the Falun Gong Protection Act in the House.
And tell us a little bit more about that, Cynthia, as we keep an eye on this parade.
Yeah, sure. So basically, you know, historically, you guys had a great timeline, but in the past, in ancient China, practices and cultivation were passed from teacher to disciple. And in 1992, for the first time in history, Falun Dafa was taught to the public. And I think a lot of people around the world in over 110 countries have benefited greatly from the inner peace, the spiritual aspect, the lifestyle aspects of truth, compassion, forbearance. It really offers a moral standard of living. And I think, as you can see here, a lot of the banners say Falun Dafa is good. And behind you, you see the teachings of Falun Dafa. And I think the whole parade has this theme of like celebrating what's good and true, these universal values. And with the new bill passing, the Falun Gong Protection Act, this will be the first binding legislation if it passes in the Senate and it gets signed into law. This will be the first binding legislation to really sanction Chinese officials who are perpetrating religious persecution and really horrific violence against spiritual people and people of faith.
And I think that's really exciting for lawmakers and the American public as a whole. And right now we are seeing these poster boards that these practitioners are carrying. They demonstrate the book 转法轮.
Yeah, the book has been translated into dozens and dozens of languages. And what's really interesting, as you mentioned and alluded to, Falun Dafa, a secret practice always taught from master to disciple through the lineage. And so part of why these practitioners will walk in the rain, because they're so appreciative of the practice being disseminated widely. And when Mr. Li Hongzhi began to spread the practice, he lived out of a suitcase for 2.5 years so that he could selflessly teach anybody who wanted to learn. And as a result, it spread throughout the world for free. And these practitioners want to honor the sacrifice that Mr. Li, who has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize many times, they want to honor his birthday and show their appreciation.
Yeah.
And this Grand Falun book, it's the main book of Falun Dafa, and it has the teachings in it that really guide practitioners and how they should live their everyday lives as people of elevated moral character. And on that note, we're actually going to go now to NTD's Sherry Ning. She's actually live on the ground at the parade. Now, she's with someone who began practicing Falun Dafa as a child and who has now devoted her time to clarifying the truth about this practice. Sherry?
Hi, Fiona. Yes, I am standing here outside Grand Central Station here. The parade has started, but it hasn't reached us just yet. I'm standing here with Rachel Yu. She is a young Falun Dafa practitioner who is with Falun Dafa Info Center. Now, Rachel, you started practicing Falun Dafa as a child. Can you tell us about what kind of impact this practice has had on you growing up?
Yes, Falun Dafa has had a profound impact on me growing up, especially when overcoming challenges and facing conflicts. I can give one example. During university and part of a group project, I was with a partner I wasn't too familiar with, and he would only communicate the night before the assignments were due, which really frustrated me. But I decided to reflect on the values I learned and felt that I should reflect inward. And maybe he also had some personal challenges or conflicts going on in his personal life that I wasn't aware of, and I should be the bigger person and forgive him. So even though I had completed most of the work, I decided that was okay, and I let it go instead of rising to my anger.
That sounds wonderful. And you currently work for Falun Dafa Info Center. Can you tell us about what kind of work you do there and why you've chosen to work there?
Of course, so I'm with the social media team with the Falun Dafa Information Center, and I mostly create short-form content, whether it's in the form of videos or social media posts. And I'm with the Falun Dafa Info Center. The reason is actually quite personal. So growing up, I had a lot of friends who faced persecution directly, experienced persecution directly as well. And the Falun Dafa Info Center spotlights persecution cases within China as well as abroad. And right now they're tracking the transnational repression. And I felt it was in my responsibility to speak up with the ability that I could for those who are unable to or cannot speak out for themselves.
That sounds great. And today you're participating in the Falun Dafa Day Parade. What does participating in this parade mean for you? And is there anything you want to say to people watching it?
Yes, I'm really honored to be here today with hundreds of other Falun Dafa practitioners out here in the rainy weather as well. And we're celebrating 33 years since 1992, since the practice of Falun Dafa began. And I would like to the people watching here and across the world to know that the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance are good. And today in China, this kind of parade is unable to be seen because China suppresses the freedom of belief. And overseas, with the opportunity we're given and that we're able to celebrate joyfully with the rest of the people here, I would like everyone to know the significance and impact of today.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. A very inspiring story from a young practitioner here. We'll have more stories for you as the parade goes on. Back to you, Fiona.
Yeah, and I think it's very relatable to hear those types of conflicts that you get and that you might encounter in university. It's great to hear there that she, through Falun Dafa, was able to really manage her emotions well and resolve those conflicts well. But now we're going to go back to this live look of the parade. I mean, it's raining, but these colors, they are popping.
They
Cynthia.
are popping. You have the whole rainbow, the whole entourage. And I think, you know, the speaker said earlier, you know, that how Falun Dafa has improved her daily life. I think a lot of these people in the parade share the same sentiment, which is why this parade, it's only held once a year. It's so long awaited. So despite the wind, despite the rain, despite some of them traveling states over to come to New York City just for this hour and a half that they have, is really important to them. I mean, faith is central to most people's lives. If you have faith, if you believe in a creator, then I think that's core to your identity. And for a lot of people here, like standing here is representing, people in China who can't be represented. So I think it's so amazing to see, and it's so heart touching.
Yeah, and Cynthia, to the point that you're mentioning, and as we just heard from that interview with Rachel there, this is a type of parade you can't see in China, despite it demonstrating traditional Chinese culture and values. These beautiful banners that say Falun Dafa is good in both Chinese and English, and actually some other languages as well.
Yeah.
This is something you can't see in China.
Yeah, I did see Khmer as well, which is Cambodian, the national language in Cambodia. So I really appreciate the diversity and the representation that this parade includes.
And Carrie, I know that you're actually a native to this area. You've been here pretty much your whole life. How does it make you feel to see this type of a parade in what's really your hometown?
Yeah, it's so heartwarming to see in the rain, they just persevere, and they just have the heart to share Falun Dafa, both with the city of New York, and of course, New York being almost a platform for speaking to the world. And they want to share this with the world, and they also want to thank Master Lee for bringing the practice public.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention real quick, you talked about perseverance in the rain. As an American myself from Texas, I think perseverance is so central to America, but also so central to Falun Dafa. And there's a lot of parallels in both of its histories. If you look at the American flag, the color blue, which is also represented a lot in this parade, is representing perseverance. And one of the core values of Falun Dafa is this belief of tolerance, of forbearance, and of enduring even in the rain or even in hardship. And I think that's a very common and relatable story that a lot of Americans can also find motivation from.
Yeah, and there on the screen, again, we're seeing Tianguo Marching Band live. Look how even their steps are. Would you believe me if I said that practically none of these people are actually professional players of these instruments? Very impressive. Let's tune in and listen a little more.
Don't worry.
You know, this rain and the determination that we're seeing on these people's faces actually really reminds me of this amazing oil painting by a Falun Dafa practitioner. Her name is Michelle Chen. You're seeing it on screen right now. It's called The Call of Innocence. So you're seeing this little girl. She's on a rainy street in Manhattan, just like today, but this painting was painted back in 2005.
Yeah, I just love the intensity in her expression, the look in her eyes, the resilience, the strength, even though she's so young, but also the incredible kindness and that gentle flower in her hair. It's such a contrast to the message that she's holding on the sign.
Yeah, and I think the sign, we should really focus, killed for their belief. For someone for so young to know about something so horrible and so real going on, religious persecution, human rights.
Yeah.
A lot of people turn their eyes away from it and turn their ears away because it's so horrifying and because people can't believe it.
But then you see this interesting juxtaposition
Yeah.
where something so horrifying is happening, but then these practitioners, they're using such a peaceful and beautiful method to try and raise awareness. Look at that float. I believe this float, it actually demonstrates or visualizes the idea of a heavenly kingdom in the sky, because the Chinese people, they believe that there are heavens above us and that divine beings live there, and they wear these beautiful costumes.
Yeah, just look at the care that's gone into putting all the flowers into arrangement. And then here we see the sign, of course, at the front of the parade celebrating Falun Dafa Day, May 13th. Yeah.
世界法轮大法日 translates identically.
Hey, not bad, Cynthia. All right, and we're going to turn away from the parade for now because NTV's Arlene Richards actually has something for us. All right. Never mind. We are going to stay on the parade actually for now.
What does this sign say, Cynthia?
The bottom says 生日快乐, which is happy birthday, and the top is 慈悲伟大的师尊, which is a benevolent teacher, and it basically is celebrating his birthday.
Yes, once again referring to the fact that May 13th is not only the day Falun Dafa was introduced to the public, but the birthday of its founder, Mr. Li Hongzhi.
Yeah, if you squint a little bit, you can see some emblems on the left and right side littered throughout.
I see the orange circles.
Yeah,
Yes.
the little circles. Those are actually the emblem of Falun Dafa. It's a circle with 5 Srivatsa, Buddhist Srivatsa symbols, and 4 Taoist yin-yang symbols. And most people know of yin and yang, like the white and black circles with the dots in the middle. These Buddhist and Taoist symbols really, in our practice, is like a miniature of the universe because you have balance, you have all of these elements of Buddhism, of Taoism, of culture, of Chinese tradition, and we believe that it's rotating just as everything in the universe is.
Yeah, and we're seeing on screen right now on the bottom there a quick fact actually about Falun Dafa. By 1998, so that was only 6 years after the practice was introduced, the Chinese state estimated that over 70 million people were practicing Falun Dafa in mainland China. And if you just heard there earlier in that timeline that Kevin and I did, some estimates went as high as 100 million people. So I've heard stories. I personally did not see that with my own eyes in China, but people who were there, they've told me, you know, at one point, just walking on the street, every park you pass, every patch of grass you pass, there was someone standing there doing the Falun Dafa exercises, reading the Falun Dafa book, Zhuan Falun. It was permeating society, and it was incredibly peaceful and beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the college campuses, the photos of Tsinghua University and other universities back then, it was a morning routine for students and for faculty, for professors. I think if you can compare it to a music festival in America, for example, and you just like glance over and there's tens of thousands of people just standing there practicing slow exercises and meditation, it must have been an incredible sight.
Yeah, when you hear the Falun Dafa music that's played during the exercises, it's so tranquil. So to see thousands of people in near silence, it's a very powerful atmosphere that's created that you can't even imagine what it would have been like for 7% of the population to have all been practicing both a peaceful meditation exercise, but also the cultivation aspect of the practice, which is about refining moral character. And there's really no direct translation for cultivation. That's the closest word in English, but really what we're talking about is if you think about Western exercise where you may go for a jog or pump iron, you gain the benefit. But with cultivation, it's like you're building your spiritual muscles, your
mental.
Yeah, you're refining yourself so you don't just gain the benefit of reduced stress and calmness, but all your family members gain the benefits. And so it's really such a phenomena that was taking place in China before the persecution began.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the parade is going to end at the Chinese consulate in New York City. If you go to the Chinese consulate every weekend, you can see a Falun Gong practitioner in New York City or other cities around the world play the meditation music and appeal peacefully. There is this one in London, actually, that I visited last summer. They're famous for their 24-hour appeal in front of the consulate. In rain or snow, midnight or mid-noon, it's an incredible sight, and they're sitting at the sidewalk right across the street from the Chinese consulate, and they're sitting in meditation for 24 hours straight.
It's unbelievable. the resilience and the perseverance that comes from the word Ren, of the Zhen Shan Ren, is about developing that inner discipline and self-control, and to put your mind to wanting to do a 24-hour appeal is something. And I want to focus on that book. Fiona, what book are they parading down the street there?
Well, that's a good question, Carrie. That is actually one of their largest models in the parade of the book, again, Zhuan Falun, which is the main book of teachings in Falun Dafa. The words Zhuan Falun roughly translates to turning the law wheel. Now, it's a compilation of these 9 lectures given by Mr. Li Hongzhi in China between the years of 1992 to 1994. During those years, Mr. Li Hongzhi was traveling all around China, hosting these lectures to share his teachings with the public. And it was this book, it was first published in 1995. By 1996, it was already a national bestseller in China.
Yeah, and in 1996, actually, the Chinese Communist Party began to do the repressive campaign, began to build up on the persecution. And so a lot of publishing houses couldn't publish it anymore because it was outlawed. And so instead, practitioners would just hand copy the book and pass them for free out to people who wanted it.
And this book, it's around 300, almost 400 pages long. So that's a lot of copying. It takes a lot of dedication and faith in what you're doing. But then the great thing about now that we have the worldwide net, the internet, is that this is actually all free online for anyone to go online and read it, learn about it. It's translated into 50 languages worldwide, and there's also more instructional materials. This isn't the only book that has Falun Dafa's teachings in it, and they're all online.
What I love about the book and the story behind it is that Mr. Li traveled relentlessly for 2.5 years because there was no mass publication of the book. And so he went city to city and he gave an oral lecture. And then one of those lectures was actually recorded, and you can go onto the website, falundafa.org, and you can watch that lecture, that video lecture that he gave. That lecture, of course, was then edited by him personally multiple times to then be published and serialized into the main text of Falun Dafa, Zhuan Falun, which we're seeing these parade goers parade down the streets of Manhattan, not just in the Chinese language, which we see here, but in the, I think the sign said 50 languages,
yes,
which it has been translated to.
Yeah, and we're seeing these banners here. They say life-changing health and moral improvement, universal values of truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. And these are actually sentiments that we're hearing lawmakers echoing now, not just in the US, but also in Canada, in Australia. We just saw, my show had a report on it a couple days ago. This was happening in Canada. But then now we're also seeing the dragon dance.
It's beautiful. Look at how many people, I think there's about 10 people carrying that dragon. And I heard it was very, very heavy. So some of these people who are doing the dragon dance have years of experience. It is not an easy feat. Sometimes they do, they're changing formation, and then sometimes they also jump over each other. So it requires a lot of dexterity, and in some areas you can even compete in dragon dancing.
Wow. And I think it's really interesting to note here, if you look closely, a lot of them are Western practitioners. Not all of them are Chinese, because another key aspect a lot of people are touched by when they learn about Falun Dafa is that these values, they transcend nationalities, they transcend ethnicities.
Yeah, I think that the thing that you see throughout this parade, the theme, whether it be the dragon dancers or the folks holding the signs or the people carrying the books, is that in order to pull something off so grand, you need to harmonize with others. And in order to do that, these principles, truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, is saying, I can think of others and I won't be left behind. And in fact, I can get ahead by putting others first. And I think these are tenets that come through developing one's moral character, and you can see the joy that they have all working together.
A little bit of an action shot there. Yeah. So just a little more, some fun facts about the dragon. You know, in traditional Chinese culture, dragons, they symbolize power, strength, goodness, and good fortune. It's actually different from the dragons that we know here in Western culture, which usually represent more of the evil antagonistic side of things. You always see the knight slaying the dragon, but not in traditional Chinese culture. In traditional Chinese culture, dragons are considered almost a guardian of the heavens.
And right now we're going to toss to our reporter on the ground, Sherry Ning. She's with a family of Falun Dafa practitioners who found spiritual resonance in the practice, bridging their cultures and backgrounds. Sherry, what do you have for us?
Hi, Carrie. That's right. I'm here with Julia and Bobak Banyasadi. They have both been practicing Falun Dafa for many years. Julia and Bobak, you guys are actually from different cultural backgrounds. Can you tell us a little about yourselves and how you each came to practice Falun Dafa?
Yeah, sure. My name is Bobak, and I was born in Iran, and I moved to Sweden when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And then from there, when I was about 20, I moved to the United States. And when I was in the U.S., in Colorado, there's a street called 16th Street Mall in Denver. Hello, Denver. And that's where I saw people practicing these very slow, rounded, meditative exercises that I just thought looked so peaceful. And from there, I just got immediately attracted, and I started to talk to those people. Actually, I had to disturb them, but I started talking to them, and I just sounded great, so I started. That was back in 1999.
That's wonderful. And how about you, Julia?
Yes, I'm originally from Hamburg, Germany, and born and raised there. And I got in contact with Falun Dafa through my friend in high school. I was 20 years old. That was like 1998. And she had just come back from China and brought back this book called Joran Falun, which is the main book of Falun Dafa. And then she knew I was interested in spiritual things, so she said, oh, please go ahead and read it. It's really great. So I started to read it. My sister started to read it. And, I never stopped.
That sounds great. What kind of impact do you think practicing Falun Dafa has had on your everyday life?
The impact has been very positive and really amazing. I would say the couple of things that comes to mind is one, Falun Dafa, the principles of Falun Dafa, which is truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, has acted like a compass in my life. You can say that before I practiced Falun Dafa, I was kind of lost because I just didn't have that compass. And after it, I really found myself, which really helped. Another thing that I would say about Falun Dafa is that Falun Dafa taught me the concept of looking inside myself to improve myself. And this looking inside and measuring myself with the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance has really helped me to improve as a person. My growth has been exponential. It has been amazing.
And how about you, Julia?
I would say the biggest impact it had was it brought back our broken family. I came from a very broken family. We had very bad relationships. I had a lot of resentment towards my parents. We moved out at a very young age, and when we all started to practice, except for my dad, but 2 siblings and my mom, it kind of healed the relationships, and even to a point where now I have my own family, and really taught me to have a good family, a supporting family.
That sounds wonderful. And we can see from the parade, which has just reached us here, that there are people from different races and ethnicities all marching together. What do you think? Why do you think so many people from all around the world are able to resonate with the teachings of Falun Dafa?
That's very easy. The principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance are very universal. I have been to many countries, and wherever I go, I can introduce those principles to them very easily with basic communication, and right away we have a platform, we have somewhere to start our friendship with, so it has been great.
That sounds wonderful. A wonderful story from a beautiful family. That's it from me. Back to you in the studio. Thank you very much.
And Julia and Bobby Beniasati, having come from Colorado, Bobby of Persian descent, Julia of German, and they've come together based on these principles. Really a heartwarming interview. And there's countless stories of just like theirs, of people who, there's tension in their family and their relationships, and they learn they learn to
Take a step back.
Yeah, take a step back. That's right, and put others first, and harmony comes to their family. But let's take a look here, though, at the parade now, going down 42nd Street.
And we're seeing there some young students from Northern Academy in upstate New York playing the taiko drums. Now, I think this is really fun. Now, last year I actually reported on the ground on this Falun Dafa Day parade, and I got to interview one of these young performers. He was actually telling me that taiko drums, for a lot of the general public, they think it comes from Japan, but actually it originates from even earlier on in ancient China. And then these drums, they were used on the battlefield because back then, you know, they didn't have telephones or anything, or walkie-talkies or radios. So these soldiers would hear the drum beats and know their formations or how fast to march. And at the same time, it then became used in different festivals to
carry the heritage on.
That's right.
I think earlier the story of that lovely married couple really moved me emotionally because I felt like that compass they were talking about, you know, the 3 principles. I kind of have like a mental checklist in my head in the same way. I've grown up in the spiritual practice, but you know, when I was younger in school, whenever there was a conflict or whenever I felt frustrated that I wasn't being heard or I wasn't being seen, I would go through this checklist of truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. Am I being true? Am I being true to myself, to other people? Am I being honest? Am I being kind? Am I being patient? And a lot of the times I could find my answer.
And I think that's a theme that we're hearing all throughout today, even from the first interview with Rachel. It's very moving.
Yeah. And then now you see even more colors. We have pinks, greens. It's really such a wide array of hues, and I feel like it celebrates so many different aspects. You see them smiling in the rain. It's just so amazing, so incredible to see them out here. And then obviously like the New York skyline in the back.
Yeah, and the American flags right behind the Falun Dafa flags. It's really
very
just a
symbolic.
great, beautiful.
And we're seeing there another fact box popping up on the screen. I'm loving these fact boxes,
Yes,
you guys.
well done.
Back in 2019, a Falun Dafa practitioner who was actually persecuted and survived that in China, she ended up meeting with President Trump alongside other survivors in the White House. It was a very significant moment.
Yeah, I remember that happening, and I've talked with her more recently because unfortunately her husband is currently sitting in jail as we speak. And her name is Dr. Jiang. She's very renowned, a Russian professor, and she taught all those years in China, but because of her faith, the Chinese regime decided to sentence her, and her husband is still in jail for his advocacy.
And you know, I think this is a really important juxtaposition here because on the one end, we're hearing these practitioners talking about how this practice brought them closer to their families and mended these relationships. And then suddenly this persecution comes along and completely rips that apart.
Yeah, now they're physically also ripped apart by location. I mean, you know, she's here in New York and he's still in China, and she can't even communicate with him, which is very common. A lot of Falun Gong practitioners, once they're thrown in illegal detention or they're sentenced, they're incommunicado, which means that lawyers can't contact them a lot of the times and their families can't.
And now we're seeing on screen the exercise teams of this parade. So as we mentioned a little earlier, Falun Dafa, it is made up of these 5 gentle, slow-moving exercises. 4 of those exercises are standing exercises. One of them is a sitting meditation.
And they're holding their hands in a particular gesture. Cynthia, what is that way that they're holding their hands?
Yeah, so this is how you begin every exercise and end every exercise. You usually see this in a lot of Buddhist meditation, and you can kind of hear the music in the back. The music is saying to stretch upwards and then come back down, and then they're doing a Hongzhi pose, which is very commonly seen.
Yes.
There's an emoji. But behind this, it's no more known as a prayer pose in America or in the West.
And so, yeah, this is the first exercise of the practice. It's called Buddha stretching 1,000 arms.
Yeah, and as mentioned earlier, the music is very slow. It's more about inner peace and really finding that inner peace while you do the exercises. and maintaining a really calm and still mind to the point where you're not thinking of anything.
And just as I mentioned that you can watch Master Li lecture online for free or read his book for free, you can also learn how to do these exercises for free on falundafa.org. And even just playing the music and trying them, usually you'll feel that energy mechanism within your first try. It's really different than any other type of exercise, Western or Eastern. And it's because it's not working with the breath or the musculature or the metabolism, but it's working on something smaller, an energy circuit that runs throughout the whole body. Anything you want to add on that, Fiona?
Well, I was just going to say, once again, another banner we're seeing on screen, gold lettering, Falun Dafa is good, the same sentence in Chinese. But Cynthia, I wanted to ask you, back to this conversation about these exercises, what kind of personal experiences have you had in doing these exercises? How have you benefited?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I was such a mischievous kid, slightly ADHD, although I was never diagnosed. And I think even in art class, I couldn't sit still long enough to finish the drawings. And every single morning, you know, when you sit down to do the exercises or when you stand up and do the stretching mechanisms and you go through all of the exercises, it really brings that inner calm that I could never find in my childhood. And I think even now, when I travel, I try to at least get a few minutes of meditation in, because it really does alter your mental state and it really alters your mindset to one of peace and calm rather than of chaos.
Yeah, and there actually have been scientific studies now that show that these types of quiet, slow-moving sitting exercises, they do help with mental health. Now we're seeing on screen these little lotus boats, or lotus flowers rather.
Yeah, it's lovely how they're dressed. I think lotus is a less known flower in America, but in ancient Chinese and Buddhist stories and teachings, you can find the lotus is quite symbolic.
Yeah, I've got a little information here. This team, it's creative and symbolically rich formation, often seen in Falun Dafa parades. The members wear these intricately designed flower boat decorations representing harmony, beauty, and traditional aesthetics. Now, these flower boats are often brightly colored, and they're shaped like blooming lotuses, which is an auspicious flower that symbolizes purity, nobility, and that's because the lotus flower grows up out of the muck, and it's completely untainted by the mud. And when it comes up and blooms, the flower is perfectly pure, even though its base is sitting in the mud, which is a metaphor for their artistic inspiration.
And you see these Chinese characters interspersed throughout the flower petals. Some of them say Zhen Shan Zhen, which means truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. Some of them say Falun Dafa, which of course is the name of the practice.
I love this yellow one right here. It reminds me of when my boss actually went to Tiananmen Square back in the early 2000s, and he carried a similar banner to that yellow one at the front saying Falun Dafa is good in Chinese. And they had gone, a dozen Americans and Europeans went to Tiananmen Square to really appeal, because that was the early days of the persecution, and they wanted to stand up for what they believe is good and true. And I think they were detained for at least 24 hours right after that appeal. And I've grown up as kind of the second generation. You know, it's happened for 26 years now, this human rights crisis. And I was born, coincidentally, the same month and the same year, July 99.
Wow.
So I'm now almost 26. So the fact that this has been going on so long that even a second generation of activists have stood up and really needed to come to this parade and speak out is just really important for the world to know and to see that 2 generations have been torn apart by the violence.
I love that you bring up your boss Levi's experience as a Westerner going to the heart of the Chinese Communist Party, and just to display a banner and then to get beat up and hauled away. I know David Bowie's drummer Sterling Campbell was among that group, and they planned it so intricately, and all they wanted to do was let Chinese people know that Westerners know that Falun Dafa is good. And they got beat up and deported out of China. And it reminds me of what we're seeing here. I mean, it is coming down now. It is raining on these people, and they're smiling, and they just want to share with New York City and with the broader world what Falun Dafa means personally in their lives. I mean, look at the rain coming down on them right now.
Yeah.
They seem so happy.
And Carrie, to that point, we're now going to go back to Sherry, who is on the ground in that rain. She is now with another Falun Dafa practitioner who's actually a professor at Feitian College. Sherry, take it away.
Hi, Fiona. Yes, I'm here with Dr. Kevin Jen. He is a professor of data science in Feitian College in Middletown, New York. Now, Professor, first tell us about how you started practicing Falun Dafa. What drew you to the practice?
I started to practice Falun Dafa in 1998 because of health issues. I remember I suffered from insomnia from 1982. At that time, Qigong was very popular in China. I tried many kinds of Qigong, but there was little help. And I got more diseases before I practiced Falun Dafa, such as back problems and abdominal distension. That caused me pain 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. I remember after I learned Falun Dafa, one day when I did the exercises about 20 to 30 minutes, and I felt very comfortable around my lower abdomen. Since then, I haven't had a pain for many years. In addition, Falun Dafa teaches people to follow the truth, compassion, and tolerance, and which changed my life and gave me a harmonious family. Before that, my wife and I used to quarrel once a week or more. That's very painful. And now we don't have this problem because we learned to control ourselves and tolerate each other.
That sounds wonderful. And you mentioned that you started practicing Falun Dafa in 1998. So how has it been like being a Falun Dafa practitioner in the U.S. with the persecution going on in China all these years?
I think the persecution is totally wrong. As I just said that, we follow the truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance to become a high moral character. And the persecution does not make common sense. And in fact, I was also persecuted. At the beginning of the persecution, I remember at that time I was a graduate student in the United States, and one of my friends who does not practice Falun Dafa, but he was the president of a Chinese student association in my school, and told me that the Chinese consulate in Chicago asked him to collect the names of those who practice Falun Dafa on campus. This also told us there are a lot of Chinese spies in the United States and other countries. Because of persecution, I never went back to China for 30 years.
Oh, wow. So you couldn't go back to China for 30 years. And from what you were saying, it sounds like the Chinese consulate was actually employing Chinese students in U.S. colleges to collect information on Falun Dafa practitioners.
Right. As far as I know, Chinese consulates pay some money to these organizations every year and for their activities. And then the CCP officials take advantage of it and force them to do what the CCP wants. Yeah.
Right. And obviously today is a very special day for practitioners like you. Is there anything you want to say on this occasion?
Oh, yeah. Today is Falun Dafa Day, and a very special day for us. We are come here to celebrate it. And as a practitioner, we we've benefited from practicing Falun Dafa greatly. And we wish more people to know the truth of Falun Dafa and practice it if possible. Yeah. Thank you.
That's a great message. Thank you so much, Professor. And back to you, Fiona.
Sherry, that was a really eye-opening interview. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. We're going to turn now back to the parade. We're seeing these flags. They're once again in primary colors we see oftentimes associated with Falun Dafa, which is this beautiful bright yellow and this almost like a royal blue. It's a very beautiful combination. They're embroidered with the words truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. We also see the symbol of Falun Dafa, which is this Falun.
Yeah, just to point that out, I'm of Jewish background, and so when my parents saw this for the first time, they were a little bit startled, and then I later learned that the origin of that wand symbol, or that srivatsa in the center, dates back thousands and thousands of years, and Hitler really just kind of stole it. But it was actually discovered in the original Hebrew temple and in many other places all throughout the world in every culture. It's almost a common symbol of different ethnicities, and they all have kind of a similar understanding of it. Cynthia, anything to share on that?
If you go to the Museum of Fine Arts or if you go to London and go to the British Museum, you can actually see this symbol on a lot of Buddhist sculptures and statues of different gods and different deities. I went last year, and in multiple museums, if you go to any part about Asian culture and you see any sort of statue, if you look towards the forehead or the stomach or the chest, usually you'll be able to find one of these Srivatsa symbols.
And we see a very big Falun there embroidered on that giant banner. But yeah, to your point there, these Buddhist statues that you're talking about here, they predate Nazi Germany by thousands of years sometimes. And actually in Asian countries, the idea of the swastika as we know it in the West, it's actually not that well known of a concept in Asian culture.
Yeah, for sure. And if you go to any sort of world history class in high school, I was taught about the Srivatsa, and it's such a rich symbol with so much heritage and so much meaning in religious communities. So I think it's really important that people are aware of that.
And we're seeing Tianguo marching band once again. They're playing some of their all original pieces. Let's listen. Umbrellas, they're actually a very important part of traditional Chinese culture as well. You actually see in a lot of traditional Chinese dances, the female dancers will hold these umbrellas as a symbol of delicateness and beauty.
Yeah, and earlier when we had that shot of Grand Central Station, there was a crowd of people just watching as the parade is passing by. And I think if you're lucky enough and you're on 42nd Street watching this, look out your window, because this will only be happening for the next hour.
Yeah, there's something beautiful about the parade going down 42nd Street past Grand Central. One of the original beautiful buildings, Penn Station, the original one, was knocked down. And Jackie Kennedy Onassis, I believe with Donald Trump together as New Yorkers, they worked to save that building. It was decrepit, and they restored it to its grand traditional beauty. And these practitioners, with their traditional Chinese pagodas and umbrellas and costumes, it's such a beautiful comment on New York City and this parade, which has now become an annual tradition here in New York. I remember one time the NYPD have come to love working these parades because compared with many of the parades that they host, they're so kind-hearted, these people, that they realize it's an easy day of work really for them to do one of these parades.
And now we're seeing a shot of the second section of this parade. This section is really focused on just celebrating the fact that it's World Falun Dafa Day and showing all the different companies, the different groups of people that all come together to cultivate and practice Falun Dafa and to show their gratitude for this practice. Right now we're seeing, we just saw a banner with Northern Academy, that's that upstate school we just saw those taiko drum players come from. We've got SY Aesthetics, Northern Medical Center. These are all these companies that really center their practices and company values in traditional culture and values.
Yeah, and right now we're showing Mr. Li Hongzhi, the founder of Falun Dafa. This parade, of course, celebrating his birthday and his bringing the practice to the world, which of course was a secret practice for thousands of years. And Mr. Li Hongzhi is a 4-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee. Freedom House honored him with the International Religious Freedom Award for his tireless efforts to make Falun Dafa free, really for anybody in any country, in any language, who's interested in learning the practice for its health and wellness benefits.
And this is a very impressive accolade. And in fact, before the persecution started back in China, the Chinese Communist Party and all of these state-run organizations, they actually honored Mr. Li Hongzhi with a lot of awards as well because they recognized the benefits that Falun Dafa was bringing to the Chinese populace.
Yeah, I know in Paris, the Chinese embassy actually invited him to speak multiple times. And all around China, he was awarded with medals. If you can see right here next to the lion dancers, there's a passerby who's dancing alongside them.
He loves it.
And
Look
to
at
that point.
And they're dancing with him, right?
Yeah, that's the type of energy these types of performances bring, you know? It brings a smile to people's faces. It's rainy, but you see these fun costumes, you see the colors, you hear the music, and it just makes your day a little bit better.
Yeah, what is the significance? I mean, obviously it's a crowd pleaser, but why a lion dance?
Well, usually lion dances are actually celebrated for the Chinese New Year to ward off bad energy, to ward off any demons or ghouls, and that's a very spiritual and rich heritage that Chinese people have passed on for years and years and years, and lion dances are not easy.
No, they are not. I don't know if you could tell there, but each lion is actually made up of 2 people. Spoiler alert, they're not real lions. The person in the front has to operate this big lion head, and these heads, they blink, that the mouths move. But then the person in the back, they actually have to crouch. They're like bent 90 degrees the entire time. And they operate the body and the tail of the lion. So it's very physically demanding. There's a lot of martial arts movements involved as well. Earlier on, we were seeing them. They were jumping up, splitting their legs in the air. It is not easy to do. I actually, when I was a kid at summer camp, I had a chance to try out lion dance. And let's just say I didn't do too well.
Yeah, there's some moves where the first person in the front would step and jump on top of the shoulders of the second one. So incredible acrobatics are needed for this.
And you know, fun fact, actually, the ancient Chinese people, they didn't actually see real lions. Right? They were using a bit of their imagination. They were using the traditional myths that they were inheriting from their ancestors to try and kind of imagine what these magical creatures would look like.
And what's that ball that precedes the dragon? It's kind of like there's the little boy carrying that. What is that ball?
Well, that's a fun thing too. That's oftentimes known as a pearl. Sometimes this pearl represents wisdom, it represents good fortune, and you'll usually see it's a little less physically demanding, so sometimes you'll have a cute little kid in the front holding this pearl on the stick, and these dragons and these dragon dances, they're always trying to chase this pearl. So it's a representation of always trying to chase good fortune and chase wisdom, chase these very valuable parts of traditional culture.
Yeah, and I think earlier with the lion, in Chinese it's called shi, so as you said, not the lions that we know today in Central Park Zoo, but there were different species that were similar to lions, and so they really thought these animals brought good fortune.
Now, we just saw the Tuidong Center with flags. What is that, Cynthia? What's the Tuidong?
So in English, you would translate that to quit the party. As you know, right now, the communist regime is ruling China, and so a lot of people from their childhood, including even my family members who grew up in China, they're required to join communist groups, including the Youth League. They're required to wear a red scarf around their neck and pledge allegiance to the communist flag every morning before school starts. And even in adulthood, in the workplace, you're required to join some sort of communist affiliated group so that you can be promoted and you can be seen as loyal to the party. And so what this organization does is offer a way out for Chinese people who don't believe in the Communist Party, who don't believe in communist values, and who really want freedom of information, freedom of religion, freedom of speech.
And to that point, Cynthia, we just saw there a shot of another big book model. That's actually a model of the book. You see it right there. It's the blue one with the white dove on the cover. It's called The 9 Commentaries. That's the shortened version of the title. Cynthia, tell us more about this book. How does it fit into this Tuidong movement?
Yeah, so this actually kicked off the Tuidong movement because with this book's publication over 20 years ago now, many Chinese people began to realize the truth about the communist history in China, about different decades of genocide, of atrocities that the Communist Party has wrought on its people. And a lot of Chinese people didn't know this before because internet is censored. Surveillance cameras are everywhere. You can't get freedom of information unless you defy the party and you access a VPN, but this book offers another physical way out.
That is just a startling shot of the 9 Commentaries book in front of the American flags, because NTD and our sister media who published the 9 Commentaries, the Epoch Times, was founded for the purpose of getting truthful information into China. So the ability to comment on the actual history of China that cannot be shared inside of China, it's just one of those contrasting moments in this parade. And I would say that when you meet someone from mainland China, they may not know what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989 when the rest of the world saw that tank moment. They may not even know that. And so the purpose of this book is to actually give Chinese people something that for generations they have not had because they don't have a free press.
Yeah, and I think this is something that sometimes us as Americans or as members of Western society, they kind of forget, like the freedom of speech and press that we have here, it's not something that everyone in the world has. So to have that book published at that time in that historical context, it was groundbreaking.
Absolutely, and that set up this movement, and they've captured hundreds of millions of people who have wanted to renounce any affiliation to the party, and even if they're a member of the party, they can quit under a pseudonym because it's a symbolic act of quitting the party. And beautiful to see that. And right now, I think we've got our reporter on the ground, Sherry Ning, and she's with a Florida-based software engineer who's also a Falun Gong practitioner, and he's going to share an emotional story of his father, who actually remains imprisoned in China simply for practicing his faith. Sherry.
Hi, Carrie. Yes, that's right. I'm here with Mr. Yojo, who has shared that his father was actually sentenced to 8 years in prison just for practicing Falun Gong. Now, Mr. Zhou, can you tell us a bit more about your story and the ordeals that your family has gone through?
Yeah, sure. My father is at prison at this moment. He was arrested 2021, and on the same day, there is more than 10 people arrested at the same time in the same city. So the local police want to make a very big case. So why they arrest my father? The reason very simple, because my father helped my mother to pass out flyers about the truth of Falun Gong and the persecution. So I will just give you a little bit background. So in China, because the persecution is very severe, we only fight back without violence. We pass out flyers. What's a flyer? It's just a piece of paper printing all the material about how the CCP persecuted its people, Tiananmen Square, and also Cultural Revolution, something like that. So, but doing that violate the so-called Chinese law, and they can put you in prison for that. So they arrest more than 10 people. They want to make it a big case. They said it's an organized crime. So that's why they trying to pin this to my father and sent my father for 8 years in prison. It's just, if you believe in something, if you pass off flares, you will be in prison. That's what is happening in China at this moment.
Oh, wow. Can you share with us what has kept your belief so strong? What motivates you to continue practicing Falun Gong even in the face of brutal persecution?
It's very simple. It's one word, it's belief. You believe in truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. You believe that is the meaning of your life. So I will just give you 2 examples. The first one, I have a lot of friends coming from Eastern Europe. You know, communism ruled Eastern Europe for more than half a century. But many people believe that the communism will go down someday and somehow. And then we see what's happening in the 1990s, right? Another example is Christian. Everyone knows Christian was under persecution for 300 years. If you are Christian, if you are born in 180, what will you do, right? You might lose your house, you'll lose your job, or may lose your life because of your belief. But people still do that, still stick to that principle. Why? It's very simple, because you think that's the truth of your life. That's what you are what you are living for. So if you are a true believer, you know what I'm talking about.
That's right. Belief is very powerful indeed. And earlier this week, the U.S. House of Representatives has just passed both the Falun Gong Protection Act and the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act. Now, how does it feel seeing these significant steps taken to address the persecution?
I think that's a great step, but it's a little too late. But we still need to do more. I will just give you 2 examples. The first 2 reasons. The first is on the human rights ground. What's happening in China, the persecution, the organ harvesting is beyond evil. As a human being, we object to this evil. As a country, any country, we object to this evil and we take action. On the second aspect, thinking when we speak from the interest of America, think about this. If the Chinese government, if the communists can do this to their own people, what will they do to American people, to other people? So the Chinese communist country is not only a threat to the Chinese people, but a threat to the free world. We have to take action before it's too late. Someday and somehow, the CCP will come to our door in the United States.
Indeed. And for our viewers who want to make a difference, what are some of the things that we can do to help stop the persecution?
I mean, you just raise awareness of the issue. When you visit your doctor, maybe you can talk about that, the organ harvesting in China, right? And also you can write to your representative or senator, because at this moment we only have a bill passed in the House. We still have a bill will be passed in the Senate. So you can write to your senator to call for the pass of this bill. So that's, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, and we wish you and your family all the best. And back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Sherry, for that very moving interview. It's hard to believe that Mr. Zhou's father put in prison simply for handing out flyers showing Falun Dafa, and we're all thinking of both Mr. Zhou and his father and wishing the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually have 2 flyers with me today. They say Falun Dafa, and these are flyers that really expose the human rights atrocities. These are nearly identical to the ones that his father handed out in China, but obviously these are in English.
Yes.
The ones in China would be in Chinese.
Yeah.
Yes, and you see Falun Dafa, truthfulness, compassion, forbearance.
And it's just hard to even fathom that somebody handing out a piece of paper would be put in prison, and as Mr. Zhou mentioned, potentially a candidate for the most horrific crime ever committed in human history of forcibly removing somebody's organs. But this flyer, though, it's while it does talk about the persecution in the back, it's actually showing somebody how, if they want to learn the practice, they can learn it. So, it's
even a QR code for you to scan for your convenience.
During COVID, actually, they did do Zoom classes one-on-one for free, so you can search that up. I also wanted to mention about his dad. In the Chinese Constitution, ostensibly, you can practice religion, just like in America, how we have the First Amendment. In China, if you look at the criminal code, there's nothing that outlaws Falun Gong. And indeed, if you look at their constitution, there's nothing that outlaws religion. But as we know, in practice, this isn't the truth. This isn't the fact. People aren't given the freedom to choose to believe in a creator or a God. And I think that's so terrible. And the fact that, you know, he doesn't know when he'll see his father next is really so heartbreaking. And we've heard so many stories like his.
And there are just way too many stories where in the end, they don't get to see their family members ever again.
Right.
Yeah, it really makes me think of that beautiful oil painting that we saw earlier in the show, where Mr. Zhou is actually sitting in the rain for that very same purpose, to try to save his father. And right now we're seeing, again, these boats, these lotus flower boats. Yeah,
yes.
Really shows the beauty, though, of the practice in contrast to the evilness of, as you mentioned, the Communist Party, who doesn't allow what we take for granted here in America, our First Amendment rights.
Yeah, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but they seem to be passing by Bryant Park right now.
Well, I'm not the expert, even though you make me out to be, but indeed, that is Bryant Park. Yeah, 42nd Street. It cuts from Grand Central through Bryant Park on 6th Ave, and then, of course, right through Times Square. So they're just coming up on Times Square after they clear Bryant Park. And I just want to point out Grace, this building. I love walking past this building, and it's so apropos for the parade. And we named our daughter Grace because I think it really, it explains that concept of Shan, you know, grace, having that
compassion.
Kindness, that compassion, yeah, grace.
Beautiful, Carrie.
Thanks, Fiona. Every once in a while I bring one out, you know?
Amazing grace.
Oh, and we're seeing once again the crowd pleasers, the dragons, and the lions. If you see these dragon dances, they're usually accompanied by cymbals, by drums. We could hear it a little bit in the background. It's very energetic, and these loud noises, they're also supposed to scare away evil and to dispel misfortune.
Yeah, and it's incredible. Earlier you saw them do a new formation, and honestly, that dragon is so many kilograms heavy. So the fact, and the lion dance is now passing through Grand Central.
That's right. This bridge is where Park Avenue goes right through and around Grand Central, and it creates this little shelter called Pershing Square, and it's a great place where New Yorkers gather, and of course the parade route running right through Pershing Square.
So they can get some relief from the rain.
For just a second.
Yeah, just a momentary reprieve, that's right.
And we were seeing that dragon doing almost like a whirlwind kind of move there. And you know, I've seen some of these performers, their practice sessions. I mean, this is time-consuming stuff.
So I want to draw your attention to this fact box. It's about the Wall Street Journal reporter Ian Johnson. In 2001, he did a multi-part series for the Wall Street Journal, which earned him the Pulitzer Prize. And in fact, I read this back in 2000, I think it was 2002, I read this, and I was so moved because Mr. Johnson reported and interviewed elderly women who were tortured in prison camps for their faith, but they would not stop practicing. And really just a monumental Pulitzer Prize winning article. And we don't see in the media outside of Epoch Times and NTD a lot of reporting on what's actually happening, but the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post at the outset of the persecution wrote some really powerful coverage.
And once again, we're seeing all of these banners, once again about the 9 commentaries. Cynthia, I just want to come back for a moment to Tuidang and this whole quitting the CCP movement, because I believe, according to that organization, around 446 million people have quit the CCP so far through this movement. That's no small number.
No, it's not. And I think it's incredible to see how this movement has grown. Obviously, in the early, mid-2000s, it was just the Falun Gong practitioners really introducing the book to their friends and family and exposing the persecution. But over time, more and more advocates from around China, including for democracy and for other freedom movements, have joined in the call to quit the party. And I met someone just last week who works in North Carolina, and she works as an IT professional in the day, and at night she makes calls to China, and she's made 50,000 calls.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Over the past 13 years.
Wow.
And even to inside the state apparatus, to police, to other officials. And she said that over 5,000 people have agreed to quit the CCP during the call.
Wow, that is amazing. And this is all volunteer work. I mean, these people, they're doing it purely because they believe in the message.
And because they know that Chinese people are awaiting their calls, are waiting for the chance to quit the party.
Absolutely. And once again, there at Grand Central Station. We just saw earlier a little clip of Times Square. I believe this is a
There
shot
it is right
of Times
there,
Square.
yep.
So there are those taiko drum players. It's so cool to see aspects of traditional Chinese culture in such a Western and modern place. But let's listen to these drums for a second. All right, unfortunately, it seems we just missed them, but that's all right. At least we heard them a little while back.
Now, when you're in Times Square, as we just saw, you have this feeling that you are in the center of the universe. I mean, it just has that energy, whether it's day or night, and to see this peaceful truth, compassion, tolerance energy float through the center of the universe with all of its energy, it's just such a moment.
Once again, Falun Dafa banners, those flags.
In front of Bryant Park. I think it's so fitting for a celebration because if you pass by Bryant Park on a daily basis, you know that there's always wedding celebrations or some sort of baby shower going on.
Farmers market.
Exactly. So it feels very fitting to see them pass by.
And these flags, actually, they are also a part of traditional Chinese culture. They're not just for show here. It's pretty interesting when you see these flags because this is what these flags look like on battlefields in ancient China. Because once again, like I said, they didn't have the technology, they didn't have any sort of radar or sonar or whatever. So then these flags, they would be used to tell soldiers where to go, where your army was. It also helped to boost morale because when you see your flag with your insignia on it, it fosters this sense of pride and these soldiers.
Rally around the flag effect.
Exactly, exactly.
The most literal effect.
Yes. And we see that in Americans too. Americans are very proud of their flags.
Yes, that's true. That's true. That's why we see the American flags pop in and out every single time in the background. It's amazing to see the support as well from passerbys who were crowding around earlier. They're passing by Times Square now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so beautiful to just see the unity, the way that they're so peaceful and calm and walking down the city with no fuss.
That's right. It's really very, very beautiful. And all of these practitioners, they don't seem to be minding the rain. You know?
Yeah, not at all.
Not even a frown.
Not at all.
All right, and earlier we saw that painting that really demonstrates the same type of energy we're seeing today of these practitioners standing so steadfastly in the rain. That painting was part of the art of Jinshanzhen, actually, which is this Falun Dafa-based international art exhibition. You know, it's toured more than 40 countries, over 200 cities. And a lot of those art pieces in those exhibitions, they demonstrate different aspects of being the experience of being a Falun Dafa practitioner. A lot of a visual representation of these spiritual beliefs that these individuals hold.
Yeah, look at this piece right here of the angel providing heavenly music to the person who's dozing off after a session of reading Zhuan Falun. It's and this is not AI generated art, right? This is the real deal,
This is
classical
all
realism,
human-made
yeah,
classic art.
oil painting.
Yes, and a lot of those paintings, they also depict scenes of persecution. And I'm going to be honest here, some of those paintings, they're hard to look at, but they demonstrate a very real reality that is going on to this day in China. To that point, Cynthia, I know you do research on this topic. Tell us a little more about this type of persecution in China, because I think when we say the word persecution, a lot of Americans are like, how bad can it really be, you know?
It's almost like the word that has been used by the U.S. government is genocide. because that's
Yes.
really the word that more accurately describes it. Sorry to steal
Exactly.
your thunder, but
No,
please jump
no,
in,
no,
Cynthia.
of course.
And also tell us about the work that you're doing with the Falun Dafa Information Center.
Yes.
Sure. So it's my boss Levi began this organization to track the persecution nearly 26 years ago now. And really over the past few decades, we've managed to document over 5,000 deaths along with other human rights organizations. And we've tracked thousands and thousands of torture case stories and of experiences from family who've really lost their family members. They've disappeared into thin air and they don't know where they are. We've also heard experiences from the first known survivor of forced organ harvesting who was put in prison in the early 2000s for his belief in Falun Dafa, and part of his lung and liver were cut out without his consent because they were beginning the state-sanctioned organ harvesting industry in the early 2000s, and now it's blossomed into, boomed into a $1 billion industry by some estimates.
And on that, the House did just pass that Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act, which it's a very good first step.
Yeah, yesterday there was a press conference, and I know that, a lot of people have been very supportive of Falun Gong practitioners and of other prisoners of conscience. The bill in the House on Wednesday passed 406 approving votes, which is really difficult in this day and age, but there were 203 Democrats, 203 Republicans in support.
And I just want to shout out to Chris Smith, the sponsor of that bill, because he's from New Jersey like myself, and he's been from the very beginning staunchly against any kind of persecution of somebody based on their faith or their belief or what have you. And so we really appreciate
And it's a
Chris
very
Smith.
beautiful message of positivity. It takes strength to get through hardship, but it takes a certain type of strength to get through hardship with a smile on your face. Yeah. And right now we're seeing
look
the
at those
Yahoo
smiles.
way. So this is what's known as the waist drum team.
Okay.
And as you see, all these ladies, they are very happy despite the rain. They're playing these waist drums that are, well, they're called waist drums because they're tied to their waist, obviously.
Yeah, right.
And we've been seeing this trend. These drums, once again, they're bringing in good fortune and happiness. Let's listen. And there we go, a very rallying performance from the waist drum team.
Incredible. And the pink really contrasts in the metropolitan gray that we see around them.
Yes.
And the sound really reverberates. I feel like I hear it here in the studio as well. And if you can see on the sidewalks there are other people also passing out flyers and lotus flowers just like this one. I brought one for you,
Oh, wonderful.
Fiona, to match your pink suit.
Oh, thank you.
And then a yellow to match your yellow tie.
Thank you.
Oh, well, that's very thoughtful, Cynthia.
Of course. And of course, like we mentioned earlier, lotus flowers really blossom out of the mud from hardship into these matured, beautiful symbols. And I really think that it represents the spirit of the Falun Gong community, as well as what we hope for America and for the future of the world is blossom and really get through this hardship, to become better versions of ourselves, to become, to walk into a brighter future.
Yeah, and I know exactly where I'm going to hang this. It's going to go right by my desk.
You got a spot for it?
Yeah, I've got a spot for it.
It says truth, compassion, forbearance, and Falun Dafa is good. How perfect.
And these colors, they match perfectly with the waist drum players.
Exactly.
Pink
Yellow
and
pink.
yellow.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I totally planned that.
Happy coincidences.
Happy coincidences.
Is what they are.
And this is the third section of the parade, I believe.
That's right. And this parade, it's still going on despite the rain. I think we're all very much inspired. I think, Carrie, you said earlier, we're kind of having the easy job here.
We have the easy job,
yes, we're
yeah.
inside, we're warm, and we're dry.
I know.
But these practitioners of Falun Dafa, it's truly inspiring to see the work that they're doing. And with that, this concludes our coverage of this year's World Falun Dafa Day Parade.
Cynthia, such a pleasure to have you join us in the studio for this momentous occasion.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was absolutely great having you here. Great conversation. Thank you, Cynthia. And from all of us here at NTD, thank you so much for tuning in on such a special occasion. We're so glad you were able to join us. I'm Fiona G.
And I am Carrie Dunst.
And now we'll be leaving you with highlights of this year's World Falun Dafa Day Parade. See you next year.
What's happened to this world we're living in? Why?
For the 4 years he has been on this earth, he has known nothing but war.
Wherever I go, the things I see, I just want to turn away. The dreams I have, the stories I could tell, will they still be possible? This year, more than ever, I need a brand new world, a clean world. Where I can improve myself and be inspired.